Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Dad Explaining Politics, as usual. This is a crazy number of episodes in. I don't even know what we're up to at this point. Do you remember?
I think we're up to 42.
42! Guys, phenomenal work. So today, we had a bit of a break last week because we had some family stuff going on, but I know that all of you were probably incredibly worried that you were missing out on even one episode, but we're back. We're back, aren't we?
Hi everyone, I'm calling in from Lisbon today, and Freddie is in Canberra.
As
she
I
said,
always am.
yes, as she always is.
Mm.
So we wanted to talk today about a few things. Obviously, the UN summit, which is finishing this week, which has been on this week. The recognition of Palestine are really the two big topics that are the topics of this week.
And Charlie Kirk.
And of course, the Charlie Kirk assassination, which was really last week, and the memorial of that. So why don't we start with the Charlie Kirk assassination? And just as some background, he was a right-wing commentator who became incredibly popular and was running, daily podcasts, etc., with millions of people, appealing to really young voters, conservative young voters, and was a key element in getting out the youth vote for Donald Trump in his latest election win. And as you probably heard, he was unfortunately terribly assassinated a week or so ago when he was at a Utah University campus doing what I think is actually, you may not agree with what he talked about, but the fact that he wanted to engage and discuss with other people in that open environment is a rather honourable thing. So really tragic that he was assassinated, and that happened over a week ago, and has brought ruptures throughout the US. The right is using it as a thing to say that this is the crazy left doing these things, and there's been all sorts of comments from the left as well. So I would say the US is in a sort of tinderbox from a left and right point of view. But Freddie, give you a comment.
I mean, as always, I think that I disagree with you. The amount of times you use tragic and disappointing and awful in the last few minutes is crazy to me, because obviously, like, as a statement of fact, no one should be being assassinated, full stop. Like, that, goes without saying. I think that everyone listening to us knows that we believe that. We don't want anyone being killed unjustly or for any reason, ever. But we're not going to sit around here and talk about him like he was some miracle worker and like he didn't, having this conversation. I'm sure most people have had this conversation with their families, with friends. You've seen how the internet has reacted to something like this. And, if you disagree with the fact that he was misogynistic, pro-life, anti-abortion, sexist, racist, homophobic pig, then maybe do some research, because I think a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon of protect free speech and not really looked into what he spoke about and not actually listened to him. I mean, how many people can really say that they listened to a full episode of his podcast, even as they support him on social media? Do you know what I mean? Like, I question the amount of people who put supportive posts up saying this shouldn't have happened, rest in peace. Do they even know what his policies are, and do they know what he's about? I don't believe that. I believe that this was a great opportunity for the right wing to take control of the narrative and call it terrorism. That's what they've called this, left-wing terrorism, extremism that's emerging in the US. But actually, if you get into the details of it, the shooter of Charlie Kirk was an incredibly right-wing conspiracy theorist who was even further right-wing of Charlie Kirk, and that's why he committed the assassin. Like, as you were saying earlier, that it's an impressive thing that he wanted to get out there and speak with people and have discussions. This was the reason why his shooter is hypothesized to have wanted to kill him, because his shooter is rumored to say things like he doesn't support even talking with the left or even having discussions with the left, because he doesn't think that there's any, benefit to those discussions. He thinks that they should be shut down completely, and he disagrees with what Charlie Kirk was doing. That's why he was killed. He was not a left-wing extremist. He was a right-wing extremist. But this narrative has been completely skewed by the US media. So that's all I have to say for right now.
Anyway, it's a tragic event. Whatever
And
side of politics
tragic.
is assassinated, it really is. I mean, no matter what.
I I said that,
Citra asked.
didn't I?
So, yes, so that happened, and then they had the memorial service, which I watched quite a lot of. You know, J.D. Vance was there, Donald Trump, his widow, who did an amazing speech, I have to say, and talked very well in terms of, you know, you've got to treat hate with love, etc., etc. And give me a chance, Freddie.
I'm
And
listening.
so I thought that was very positive. Whereas when Trump came on, he said, I hate my enemies and la la la, and was totally using it politically to MAGA's advantage, which I thought was terrible, right? So I thought that was an interesting contrast there.
It is ridiculous for a woman who has made her entire fortune off her husband's racist, sexist, anti-immigrant platform for her to say that she believes in love and no hate. That's insane. You know, it's obviously a lie. This is the continuation of the MAGA crowd consistently lying out of their asses and saying that they're good people, and people tend to believe it. It's like the more they say that they're good people and they're doing the right thing, people will go, yes, they are supporting everyone. Yes, let's think about everyone. Let's love each other. This is exactly the opposite of what they've been pushing their entire political careers. You can't just turn around and stick a band-aid on it and like pretend like you never said anything.
But would you rather she just went down Donald Trump's path of saying, I hate my enemies and
Yes, I would, because
did
it's
that in
authentic.
January?
What happened to people who were racist just saying they're racist?
Hmm.
Can't they just admit it? This is like the Nazi thing. They've started admitting that they're Nazis, and yet no one seems that scared.
Who
So, I
started?
mean, that's an inch. Like the right-wing extremists in the US have started admitting they're Nazis. They
Pleased
have.
to hear that.
Seen multiple like Fox News presenters. There was this guy on Fox News. I don't know if he was a presenter, but he was being interviewed and someone was saying to him, well, what you're saying sounds almost like Nazi ideology. And this guy was like, well, what's wrong with that? What's so wrong with the word Nazi? Let's reclaim the word Nazi. You know how the black communities reclaimed, you know, all the various words that they reclaimed, and the gay community reclaimed like the word queer and a bunch of other words. Let's reclaim Nazi. This is like a real piece of dialogue that was heard on national television in the US. So
I thought one of the terribly ironic points was that Charlie Kirk, in one of his former discussions, had talked about being pro-gun, and that, you know, I think
many
people.
times it was a staple of his political ideology. It wasn't once. I'm just adding to it.
Can I just finish my point?
I'm just adding.
Many times pro-gun, and that the cost of that is that sometimes some innocent people would be killed, and that's a cost worth taking. So it's ironic, given that he was killed by an assassin's bullet, right, after saying such a thing.
I know, because you would think, right? A man with such an impressive platform, with so many listeners, maybe could have done something to sway the gun lobby in some way, and you know, increase the guides on how many people are buying guns in America. But did he? No, he didn't, and then he was shot. So it's a weirdly ironic scene of events, I would say. I'm confused why the religious crowd aren't pointing to it and questioning the
No, that's true. That's a very good point, actually. Very good point.
the whole thing. Okay, no, I'm just gonna say, from an interesting point of view, just to look into how governments use terrorism. Authoritarian governments typically use terrorism. It's a thing that a lot of them do. So in a lot of countries around the world, governments will say, like the Chinese government, for example, will say the Uyghurs, you know, are a really dangerous ethnic group and they are committing terrorist acts, so therefore we have to put them in concentration camps. That's something that happens in, you know, even in Germany during World War II, I'm sure that they said the Jews are dangerous, so we have to put them away. They're dangerous and they're going to commit acts against our people. This has always been the rhetoric of these governments. It has happened across the world. It's still happening across the world in so many countries, all across Africa, actually. If you look at the northern African countries, if you look at the Middle East, so you look at Syria and Iran, and the rest of these who have been in authoritarian governments in periods of time, they have always said the dangerous minority is a terrorist kind of group. Even if they're just rebelling against the government in a fairly democratic way, they always label them as terrorism. And in that way, terrorism is a way to put fear into the country, right? So the everyday citizen looks up and they goes, terrorism, terrifying. We got to lock them up. How dare they? When in actual fact, it's not necessarily terrorism. It's just a word that is used
Hmm.
as a way to, advance the authoritarian government's ideals. So, coming back to the US, strangely convenient that 2 people in the past year or something like that have died from left extremist related events, right? So it was Luigi Mangione. He killed the healthcare CEO. And then there was Charlie Kirk. But as we know, Charlie Kirk was actually killed by a right-wing extremist. And yet the US media has gone around telling everyone who will listen that this is a terrorist-related event when simply they're isolated assassinations. So I think it's really important to listen to those words that they are using, like terrorism, and think properly for yourself. Think independently. Is it a terrorist act? Or is it simply a lone man on a killing spree?
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a really great point. And of
Yeah.
course, part of this, before we leave the Kirk assassination, was Jimmy Kimmel, the late night talk show being taken off air as a result of making a comment about this, a comment about who the person was that, assassinated Charlie Kirk, and he was taken off air. So it's ironic, the whole talk of the MAGA crowd wanting free speech and then taking off, influencing the broadcasting body of Jimmy Fallon's organisation to take him
I
off.
mean, well, obviously, it's free speech until you're talking badly about MAGA or Donald Trump, and then
Yes.
it's not free speech anymore, then it's hate speech. It's
Yes.
allowed when directed at anyone else in the
Yeah.
entirety of the United
Anyway,
States of America.
good news that he's back on air. So
Yeah.
that's, after a few days or so. So that's good news.
I mean, I don't know if you saw any of this online, but it seems like after that happened and after all the late night talk show hosts started getting some heat, they all started going on air and saying fairly revolutionary, really scared.
Can we move on to Palestine? Wrecking Palestine. So France, UK, Canada, Australia, Portugal, etc., have all recognised the state of Palestine, much to the disturbance of Donald Trump because he's not in favour of it. Says it gives legitimacy to the terrorists in
Hamas?
Hamas. Gives legitimacy.
And yeah, of course, I'm sure that these opinions are solely coming from Benjamin Netanyahu, right? Because at this point in time, he's in a difficult political position even. I think we've talked about this in past episodes. But he has to keep pushing and is not halting this act of genocide. As you know, the UN special inquiry came out that it was genocide that Israel was committing in Gaza. Netanyahu isn't keen to halt this conflict at any time because it looks like he'll get voted out of office. So if you see the rest of the world standing up and recognizing Palestine, it's a bad sign for him. And it will be interesting to see where he goes from there and what steps he will take. Because I don't know how you can come back from something like this.
No, will be really interesting. So, of course, this week has been the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, and many world leaders around the world have been there. One of the interesting sort of side notes of this is that the US has restricted some people going to New York for the United Nations, which really goes against the whole charter of the UN. And there's, because the UN should decide who can come to their General Assembly meeting just because it's hosted by the US. They shouldn't interfere in that. Like, Khrushchev and, Che Guevara and other people in the past have come to the UN, even though the US, haven't liked them coming. They've abided by that. So there's even talk now, should the UN move its headquarters somewhere else, Geneva, for example. Anyway, they had the session, and of course, Donald Trump spoke for about 50 minutes or so and made a joke that he and Melania were on the escalator and the escalator broke down. And then when he was speaking, the teleprompter broke down. And he did make a funny joke about that's all the UN's given him, broken escalator and the teleprompter not working, which is kind of unfortunate. And then he berated the UN and berated much of the world, right? In terms of you've got to get your immigration under control. If you don't, you'll be destroyed. Europe, he really likes Europe, etc., etc. Railed against climate change being a huge hoax and the need to combat climate change. And clearly, crazy in many of the things he said, but was on quite a roll, and also changed his view a little bit on Ukraine and Russia, and saying Ukraine can actually over time take back all the land that Russia has got, and Russia's really weak and la la la. So, I mean, a few of the topics of that session. Freddie?
Yeah, no, I find it funny how you always tend to pick out the best thing that he's done. I mean, just purely from like a fascination point of view, I guess you're trying to appeal to like a certain type of people, or maybe you just want to see him doing some good because it's depressing if he's doing too much bad. But I'm pretty sure that the general feeling and discussion after his presence at the UN is that it was a complete laughingstock, and that a massive proportion of Americans were embarrassed to have such a person representing them on the world stage. Like, there were foreign correspondents and diplomats as well laughing at him from within the United Nations assembly space. If you saw the reactions of anyone's faces during his speech, it was just looks of distaste and disgust at what he was saying, and just like a sense of unbelief.
It could be, Freddie, but you've got to think about it. How relevant is the UN now? They're mainly funded by the US, right?
I know,
And
but
what,
I'm not talking about the UN. I'm talking about all the representatives of the different countries who are there for the UN. So they matter.
well, they matter, yeah, but they've got to realise, like, that immigration point is a very valid point. Europe is, really troubled by
You
that.
think that Europe doesn't know that? Trump saying that is not going to help anything. It's just making things more difficult for them. They know the issues they have.
Yeah,
They've
but
got
have
it
they
completely
taken action?
handled.
Have they taken action to resolve it? That's the question.
You think that Trump would do a better job by creating concentration camps with alligators swimming around them?
Well, I don't know. He stopped the immigration in the US, the illegal immigration
At
in
a
the US.
huge cost to human rights, and he has not stopped the illegal immigration. It hasn't stopped.
I think it stopped from everything I read.
No, it hasn't.
Okay, where do you get that? Because I mean, seriously, I mean, if Europe doesn't get its act together, i.e., the UK, Farage will be the next Prime Minister of the UK, and then he'll follow in a Trump strategy. This is why it's important for Europe to really take some action on this immigration point.
But that's just important for the UK. That's not important for
Well,
Europe.
it's important for Italy and Greece and everyone, right? And the whole
Yeah,
of
it is,
the
but
EU.
what your reasoning for why it was important. Dada, I think that immigration has been a massive part of European political identity for a long time. The very idea of the European Union is saying that they are a distinct, country bloc, national bloc that is distinct from all of the countries around it. They've stopped Turkey and a bunch of other countries that have tried to become part of the European Union from joining intentionally because they want to have strict immigration. It's what makes them European, is the fact that they have strict immigration. They don't want to become a third world country, and they've tried very hard to stop that from happening. Donald Trump pointing out the issues that have been around for a long time is not helping them anymore. It's just making the right-wing groups in their countries a little more angry and a little less patient.
Well, that's interesting. What about, and then on the climate change side, I mean, it's clearly crazy, right? He doesn't believe in it, the greatest hoax in the world and stuff.
No,
So
I
then
think he probably, wait, can I say? I think that he probably does believe in it, but he has enough money that it's not going to impact him. I think that you'd really be insane and dumb to not believe it. I think that these mega, mega wealthy people who have all the power in the world know that it is happening, but they have to lie about it in order to have the support of their voters, right? They have to lie and say that it's not happening. But I think that to be honest, my personal opinion is I think they all know that it's happening. They're just denying it. So they popular support because they
and
know
what do
they'll
you
be
think?
fine.
And what do you think about his change in view on Ukraine, Russia, or you think that's just a smokescreen?
I also think that's just a smokescreen. Everything that he's done in the past few months has been a smokescreen for the Epstein story. Everything. I fully believe that. It's also a really ridiculous coincidence that I heard as well, which I'm aware is a coincidence, is the day that Charlie Kirk died was the day that Congress voted against releasing more of the Epstein files. But did you hear about that in the news? No, because what happened with Charlie Kirk blocked out the entire news cycle and stopped that from spreading. So it's been interesting how every single time something like that has been about to be spread by the news, it's blocked by another story. So I think that everything is a smokescreen. He just wants to stop himself from going to jail. He's just
Absolutely.
another Netanyahu or another Putin, you know? The only reason he's even president in the first place is because he was going to be put into jail for felonies if we look back to a year ago, but he was protected by the Supreme Court. So he had to become president again, otherwise he would have gone to jail.
He had to
Get back
convince
to the crux of the issue.
people to vote for him, though. Don't.
I know he had to convince people to vote to him, but I think that you respect Donald Trump in some manner, right? I think that he's capable of convincing these people to vote for him just so he can stay out of jail.
Oh, sure, sure. I agree with that.
And that
And
seems exactly
so,
like something he would do.
on the sidelines of this, Albo got a good selfie with Donald at a session, and they've now agreed a meeting for late October. So that's nice for Albo because he was coming under increasing pressure of why he couldn't get a meeting with Donald Trump,
Mm,
etc., etc.
I know, pretty embarrassing. I mean, I think even the photo wasn't that impressive, to be honest. It looked like a teenage girl at her favorite pop star's concert. He's taking a selfie, Trump's smiling like he doesn't know why he's there. Albert has this beaming grin on his face, like, finally, I've done my job. My country's going to be proud of me. It's like, God, you should have hoped a little higher. I don't think this is the best it's going to get. That's terrible.
And did you see the funny thing with Emmanuel Macron being stopped in his motorcade because the Trump motorcade was coming through, and he called Donald on his mobile and said, "Hey, I can't get through because of your motorcade." And then he and his Secret Service decided to walk to the UN. So they walked through the crowds for 20 minutes and stuff to get to the UN building, which I thought was a nice, lighter, human side to this whole thing after all this negativity we've had over recent weeks and months.
I agree, but it seems incredibly risky. I mean, you consider the political climate in the US right now and the amount of assassination attempts and assassinations that have happened recently. Emmanuel Macron walking through the streets without preparation, without like shooters on rooftops protecting him. It's very risky from my point of view.
But he did it, so anyway, and he survived.
Which is a statement in itself, at him deciding that it's more important for him to get to the UN than to fear possible death
Well, he was
by
one of the
assassination.
leaders, he was really the leader of the rest of the world at the
Well,
UN.
exactly. Yeah.
So it was kind of important. And he spoke very positively about Albo and Australia joining the coalition of the willing. So, yeah, that was all very nice. Freddie, lovely catching up with you as usual. And
Mhm.
hope our listeners have enjoyed this. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys. See you later.
Bye.